Let's start with this. So
Okay.
the NFC West best front fours. Now, what we mean by this is if it's like a obvious pass down situation. So let's say 3rd and 10. What 4D linemen are you sending out there? What are your 4 best pass rushers that you want to get out there? And Vish, you have the list that we're going to base it off of, right?
Mm.
All right. So Vish might be lagging a little bit.
He's back.
Yeah.
He's back.
Yeah.
He's back.
So,
Here we go.
So this is a little complicated to do just because there's a little bit up in the air on who the final front fours will be in obvious passing situations for all of these teams. So we're just going to go with guys that we anticipate to fall into being that guy. So starting in Seattle, the anticipated front four, I think 3 of the guys are going to be there for sure, and Kerry Hyder, Carlos Dunlap and Puna Ford. And then the 4th guy that we've kind of just thrown in there. I mean, we were talking maybe LJ Collier because they drafted him high, but I think we ended up going with
Alden Smith.
We ended up going with
Smith.
Alden Smith. Yeah, we ended up going with Alden Smith, who did rush inside primarily for the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you. I actually was blanking on him, Grant. So those are the 4 we went with Seattle. For the Arizona Cardinals, we went, and this was the easiest one. I think it lines up perfectly. Jordan Phillips, J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, and Marcus Golden. I think that would be their front 4 in an obvious passing situation. The Niners is Nick Bosa, Javon Kinlaw, Samson Ebukam, and Eric Armstead. That one also, I think, kind of is pretty easy to anticipate unless somebody thinks D Ford is going to be healthy, which I'd like to be optimistic. I think D Ford's going to play this year. I don't know if he's going to be consistently their 3rd down rusher just because of the nature of his injury. And then finally, the Rams, which I thought was the hardest one to do because there's 2 obvious ones. Leonard Floyd will be one for sure, and Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive football player I've ever seen. I was not alive for Lawrence Taylor. I was not alive for Reggie White. So he is the best defensive football player I've ever seen. So those are the 2 that are guaranteed. And then A'Shawn Robinson's a good run-stuffing defensive lineman they got from Detroit. I think he would kind of be their Michael Brocker's replacement. And then Terrell Lewis is a guy from Alabama who they drafted high. I thought Terrell Lewis was pretty good before the draft, to be honest with you. And so I think he will kind of assume that role on the outside, opposite of Leonard Floyd. So those were the front 4s we went with. So I'm going to throw it straight to you, Grant. Who's got the 4th best front 4 in the NFC West?
I like. Let's do it in ascending order to build a little suspense. To me, it's now this team has improved their front 4 tremendously, but I still think Seattle has the worst front 4. I mean, Carlos Dunlap was a big addition for them. He's still a good player. Alden Smith, we'll see if he even makes it to the season. Puna Ford is a run defender, good player. More of a run defender. And who's the last guy they had coming off the edge?
It was
Kerry Hyder, of course.
Kerry Hyder.
Hyder, of course.
Here's the thing. I like Kerry Hyder, but he has broken some teams' hearts before. He really hasn't ever done anything away from Chris Kosaric. I'm going to say the Seahawks have the worst defensive front 4 in the NFL. I mean, in the NFC West when it comes to pass rushing.
That's fair, Blake. Let's have you go next.
I have the same one. I mean, I think all the other teams have at least one guy who's you can count on consistently, who's elite. I'd say like that's Bosa, Chandler Jones, and then Aaron Donald. The Seahawks don't really have that. Theirs is definitely lacking that one guy who can consistently play make. Their best blitzer on their team is Jamal Adams. I mean, that's all we really need to say to show that their D-line maybe isn't up to par with the rest of these teams. So, I'm going Seattle, and I don't really think it's close. I think the other 3, they're definitely in the same realm, but the Seahawks are like a tier or 2 below these other 3. But Vish,
Yeah, to me, this was probably one of the easiest answers of this entire exercise. Seattle has the worst front 4 by far. I think the rest of the front 4s, it's going to be open for debate, and I'm expecting a lot of disagreement. But to me, Seattle, this is obvious. I mean, Carlos Dunlap, I guess, was pretty good for them last year. You know, he had 6 sacks, and he came in and gave them a much-needed boost. But Carlos Dunlap has also been around for a while. He's
Yeah.
32 years old. We know what Kerry Hyder is away from Chris Kasarik. That one, I think, is a little bit of a question mark on whether they can rely on that. Again, Grant touched on it. Poona Ford is a run defender. And then Alden Smith, even though he had a resurgent season for a guy that was not in football for 6 years, he wasn't Alden Smith of before. We don't expect Alden Smith to come in and just dominate. So, yeah, this was obvious to me. And I think it's actually a big need for Seattle, especially because they let Jaron Reed walk. And Jaron Reed wasn't the best last year, but Jaron Reed has been a very good football player for them in the past. I think there's a lot of questions with Seattle's front seven because there's another guy that's a little older, but a really good player that they've left unsigned so far through free agency. And we're going to touch on him in just a little bit. And so by far, to me, Seattle's front four, by far, I would say Seattle's front four is not only the worst in the NFC West, I think it's one of the worst in the NFL.
Good call. Yeah.
Okay,
number 3.
On to 3, Grant. I'm pushing this one your way again. You're starting us off. You're the guinea pig. Who do you got at number 3?
This might sound controversial, but I'm going to put the 49ers at number 3. And that's not to say that they have a bad D-line. It's a good D-line, and it's a deep D-line. It might be the deepest. But they don't have Buckner anymore, and the replacement, Javon Kinlaw, isn't really a pass rusher yet. Now, if he could put together an 8-sack season, that changes everything. But I'm not expecting that. So Kinlaw's kind of like the Poona Ford of the group. Eric Armstead should have a better year rushing from the interior. I like Ebukam. Of course, Bosa's a stud. Don't really know how much he's going to play this year, but I'm going to put them at number 3, and I think that more has to do with who the other teams have. I'm not going to say like, well, this guy's not that good or that guy's not that good. It's just some really good D-lines in this division.
Yeah, so I actually kind of agree with that. I was undecided up till my number 3 till now, and I'm also going to go with the 49ers. If we were ranking D lines, I think the 49ers would be first because the 49ers 1 through 8 is way better than everybody else's 1 through 8 in this division. I also think if we go based on potential, the 49ers could be 1 because of what Javon Kinlaw could be. And if D Ford is available, then it changes this entire conversation. But right now, given what we know, I think they're the 3rd best in terms of just a pure third down front 4. I mean, Nick Bosa, we know, right? Nick Bosa is spectacular. But the other 2 teams have a guy who kind of cancels out the Nick Bosa effect. Aaron Donald is just better than Nick Bosa. Sorry to tell you the truth. Aaron Donald's just better than him. And
so is Chandler Jones.
Or worst case, every bit as good as each other. They cancel each other out. So now it's a conversation about the other 3. And you look at Arizona, they got a guy in Marcus Golden who's had multiple double-digit sack seasons in his career. Not the best all-around football player, but in terms of third down pass rush value, excellent player. Jordan Phillips, his contract year with the Buffalo Bills, had 9.5 sacks. And I thought the Buffalo Bills sorely missed him last year. And then J.J. Watt still has something left in terms of just pure pass rush ability. I know everybody wants to write off J.J. Watt because of the durability. It is a question mark. But J.J. Watt is still a really good football player. I don't know what people watch if they think J.J. Watt still can't play football. He's still really damn good. And so because of that reason, and just because I have question marks, I have question marks, I would say, with Javon Kinlaw in terms of I think he's going to have a really good second season. Now, will it be a 10-sack season? I don't think so. I think he's going to have a good all-around football season. And then Ebukam is just not a natural pass rusher. He's an amazing football player. He does a lot of different things, but he's the opposite of Golden, where Golden isn't a great football player in terms of being good against the run, being scheme sound, being smart, and all of those things. But the one thing Golden does is he's a natural pass rusher, and Ebukam's an effort pass rusher who wins with effort and power. So because of that, I'm going to have the Niners 3 as well.
I hate to agree because I thought maybe this would be the spot we get some disagreement, but I'm with you guys. And I really think the whole D Ford situation hurts a lot because him healthy. We've seen what he's done, what he has done in the playoffs, and he can be a really talented pass rusher. But yeah, just his whole health concerns is really tough to see. He got a lot of money and, obviously his body's kind of starting to break down and that's tough to see. But I think with the other guys too, and, with Armstead specifically, like you'd want to see more out of him last season because as of right now, he kind of just looks like someone who significantly benefited from having Nick Bosa and DeForest Buckner on the line next to him and getting all the attention. And Nick Bosa's still there, and I think all of us can agree Nick Bosa is a top 10 edge rusher, and he's fantastic. But you're kind of missing a little bit from the other guys that these other teams, I'd say, have a little bit more of. But I think the Niners do have the potential to be the best overall D-line, similar to what you guys were saying with if you're just going off of 1 to 8, depth and everything included like that. They have, potentially Arden Key and Maurice Hurst stepping up too, but going off of strictly front four in a pass rushing situation, I'm going to put them third, but I think they have the potential to be higher this year.
And I think the other thing to touch on is I think we're talking from a pure pass rushing situation, so we're kind of throwing run defending out of it. Mm-hmm. And what I think the Niners front four on the whole lacks and why I have them below the other two is I think they lack just a pure explosive, going to beat somebody off the edge right away pass rusher. Both Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead are guys that disengage from blocks and win, but they're not instant pressure kind of guys.
That's what D Ford's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. If they had a D Ford, a Marcus Golden, a Chandler Jones, a Leonard Floyd, those type of just pure speed, beat the guy around the edge. If they had that one guy, even if it was a lesser version of Ford, even with these four and the two teams' other front fours, I would actually have the Niners higher. It's just, I still think they lack an explosive pass rusher. I really do.
Brian Burns, that type.
Yeah. Well, that's amongst the best in the NFL.
So. I love Brian Burns. Yep.